Hey there, everybody, it's Jane. Let's make a pair of, I call these now petty pants for Meredith the doll. This is the pattern, and this will be posted with the matching blog post to this, and I'll put a link. But here it is, and you're just going to cut two of these. It's really, really simple. I found this really nice, soft cotton lawn, I think it's called, and I'm just able to squeeze I'm tracing it, and I have a little light table, but I didn't feel like bringing it over here and setting it up. I could see through. So please forgive my dog Henry. He's having a little bit of a breakdown, probably looking at some deer. I'm using washi tape just to tape this down so it doesn't move around. And I've got this on grain. I'm going to grab a ruler. I'm using my Friction heat erasable pen. These are great. The only warning I'm going to tell you is that you can, I'm going to use an iron. The marks will come out. If these get really, really, really cold, people have said sometimes the mark will come back. So beware. But I'm just going to mark this. This is it's a beautiful light cotton, but man, it just floats around. And you could use a French, what do they call them? Those rulers with the curves. I'm just going to trace these down. And that's it. So there it is, traced on there. I'm going to cut this out, cut another one, and I can just overlap this like this. And then what I do is pin it and then cut. And I'll even head over to my cutting table and use my rotary cutter to get these really nice and sharp. Then I'll meet you there. Okay, here are our two pieces for the bloomers. Now imagine them each sewn like this, and there you see the bloomer shape coming together. First thing I'm going to do is the hem. Oh, I pulled a little thread there. These fine cottons you learn the hard way. But when I was rotary cutting this, one little thread didn't get cut, and I pulled it instead of cutting it. And that is what can happen. It doesn't bother me. These are doll clothes, but you really want to be aware of that when you're working with fabric. So I have some vintage, some beautiful lace here. Don't leave it on the card. This is how I bought it, so I'll be taking this off. This will stain it. I don't know that it's acid-free. It's black. We don't want to wreck the color of this. But I'm going to stitch. Let me get in a little bit closer. I'm going to stitch this lace down, and I'm going to stitch it like this. All right, so I'm going to stitch right along, probably I'd say 1/8 of an inch away from the bottom. And then I'm just going to flip it like that and top stitch. Okay, so let's do that again. And if you really want to have a beautiful hem, what you can do first is sew up. I can finger press this down. Just make a little hem. And then when you go to turn this, that'll be finished. Okay, so again, I have a little 1/8 of an inch seam allowance there, hem. I finger pressed. And then I'll take my piece of lace, place it on top of that, like that. Stitch that down a scant 1/8 of an inch, right? And this is really easy to do by hand. And then you will flip it over. You'll have a nice finished bottom and a finished top. All right, I have decided to do this by hand because it's easier to show you guys what I'm doing without running back and forth to my machine. So I finger pressed an 1/8 of an inch hem at the bottom of the pantalette leg. I'm going to do this 2 times. And I'm going to cut a piece of lace just a tad bit longer, just in case. Like that. And then, and I'll pin this. Right down. Okay, so there is our lace pinned on. And I have a needle here. It's not as fine as I would like, but I don't want to spend time, look at this, searching one of my many pin cushions. So this will do. And some 100% cotton thread, and I've got it just single, right? So I put it through the needle. The tail is up there, the end, and this is actually the tail that I'm gonna knot. Right, like that. Go around 3 times, and then just give it a pull. The other thing that you should do is run your thread over some beeswax, which I also didn't do. So now I'm going to turn this over and work from this side so I don't miss any of my little hem. And I'm just going to go in make a little tack stitch like that. And then I'm just gonna do a nice running stitch. And yep, this is a thick needle. So because I'm going through this really fine cotton and the lace, it's a little resistant, but I'm gonna soldier on. And then for the other one, I'm gonna use a nice, really thin needle. And the goal is to really make your stitches as small as possible. I can tell you that that lace was probably treated with some kind of starch or something. Ooh. So when you use a bigger needle, you see I'm getting like a little bit bigger stitches than I want. All right, we're at the end here. And I always, always, always use 100% cotton thread or linen or wool. And really it's wool yarn, right? Really fine. So there it is. And I'm just going to actually do a little back stitch and then just do a quilter as one of the top knots here. Like that. And I'm using my, here we go. Now, that's what we end up with, right? So now I'm going to turn this down like this and finger press. And actually, I mean, I kind of want it down. You could, you know, see if I pull it back, you see the top of that lace? I want it just to kind of skim the top of the design like this. Right? So now I'm just going to top stitch this down. I'm going to take a little break and get the proper size needle. Okay, here are the needles. This is what I was using before. Looks gigantic next to this. This is the Hiroshima Applique number 10 needle. So that's what I'm going to use. It's got a little teeny tiny eye. So I'm going to try out my Clover threader. Let's see if it works. You put the needle down in the slot. And it did. That is very cool. Okay. And then here's the beeswax. So I might be jinxing myself because it didn't knot up, but you just run your thread over the beeswax a couple of times and then we'll knot. And I pinned everything down. And honestly, hand stitching and even this going through this cotton is really tough. So It's not really tough, but it's not like, you know, gliding through silk. Just gonna top stitch. And of course, because I'm doing this on camera, every time I hit like a piece of that lace thread, it's tough. But I do so much handwork, you guys. I love it. All of Meredith's dresses are hand sewn. So don't let this stop you. And actually, it's not bad. This needle is so much better. When you're hand stitching, you just go to your Zen place, relax. I do a lot of hand piecing, which I love. Of course, hand quilting. Back when I was like young, real, you know, in my 20s, I used to get 21 stitches per inch with my hand quilting. And I used very, very, very tiny needles. That's the goal. You don't want big stitches when you're quilting because it's holding together all your layers. And you don't want anything shifting. I give it a little pull like this because I don't want any of these stitches bunching up. And here we are approaching the end. Whoop. If I don't like how my stitches are lining up, I just back it right out. Okay, give that a little pull. A little tack stitch. And then the quilter's knot, hold that out, go under. Of course, it's getting all caught up in that lace. Come on, you. And then you just hold it, lay it flat, and you're done. So that is, you can see the little stitches look really sweet. And you have a nice finished inside, so nothing will be fraying. And I think that's going to look quite nice. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing now on the other leg, bottom. And I'll trim off, you know, these little ends here, and I'll meet you back here. So here are our little pantalettes. And what I'm doing now is I am sewing up the crotch seam. So this is the front, and I already sewed it, right? You're going to put right sides together like this, and I sewed that up with like an, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch allowance there. Now the other side though, because I don't want to put a piece of elastic, I want to have a tie. So I'm going to be sewing this I'm going to start about 1 inch down. So I'll just put a little pin there. Doesn't have to be exact. And I'm going to put another little pin right here. Right, so right sides together, and I'll get myself in just a little bit closer. And I have my very, very fine applique needle. That's what it is, with some nice 100% cotton thread. And I'm going to do the same thing. Leave about 1/8 of an inch. I start with a little lock stitch like that. I have to find my hands here on the camera. And then I just sew. Just a little running stitch. And this goes through a lot easier than it did through that lace. So you kind of push the fabric onto the needle. And there goes. This is why it's great to have this little threader. I just lost my thread there. And there it is, back again. This is by Clover, by the way, you guys. I've had it for a really long time. I just never used it. And now I'm doing just so much hand sewing, I need to use it. Okay, so let's finish this. Make a little lock stitch, take out my pin, and then a quilter's knot, right? You hold that thread out, needle goes up and underneath and through, and you pull it, hold it with your finger, and pull it like that, and then I'll give that a little snip. So, if we turn these right side out, you'll start to see how these go together. Right, so the next seam to sew is just along the inside, the inseam, right? But to finish, I'm going to go back again, right side in. I want to just finish this a little bit so we don't have these raw edges here. So what I'm going to do is tempt fate with this really short piece of thread, a little knot. But I'm just going to take this raw piece here and do a little finger press about the same. This is where stuff gets fiddly with these tiny little doll clothes. But you see how I just did a little fold there. Take my needle that's knotted, start down here at the bottom, do my little lock stitch, and then just follow this up. And if you really want to get fancy, you can fiddle with it more and fold it over twice so you don't have any raw edge. And I have done that. Since it's a doll wearing it, I don't find it necessary because it's not going to get, you know, used and worn away. But you could certainly do that. I do a lot of finished seams if you've seen any of my other tutorials. So there it is, right? I'm going to knot it off, and then I'm going to go ahead and do the other side. Again, you just go in, around, hold that flat, and boom, it's done. And I'll meet you back here. We'll make the casing for a little time and then finish. Okay, we're going to work on the casing around the waist. A couple of things I want to mention. When you take thread off of your spool, there's a right way and a wrong way. So when you pull your thread off, right, and you cut this end, you want to thread this end. You want it to go through your work this way. If you do it the other way, it's more likely to knot and get really frustrating. So remember that. Now what I've done here is I folded this over about 1/8 of an inch all the way around. All right, and now I'm going to fold it over again. It's going to be a little bit wider, like 1/4 of an inch. Okay, and then I'll put some pins in. And you want to use a really fine pin when you're working with this kind of cotton, or you can make holes. And I tend to use a lot of pins. And I finger pressed this seam open. Goes down. And continue around. Okay, so there it is. It's tiny. It's a tiny casing. So I'm going to have to keep my stitches way down at the bottom. Let me get in a little bit closer. All right. Make a knot. And I go in, just so you don't see my knot. You can kind of push all those threads inside. Same thing we've been doing. We make a little bit of a nice tack stitch there. And then I'm keeping everything down at the bottom. Find the camera. It's right down at the bottom. And if you find it helpful, you can wear a thimble. So you see me, I'm a lefty, so I'm pushing my stitches on, and I can put a thimble on this finger and then push my needle through. And when I'm quilting, I do wear a thimble. I always wear a thimble when I'm quilting. But with this, I haven't worn a thimble when I'm hand sewing. It probably would have been helpful with that lace. All right, so you get the drift. You get a nice little casing here that we're going to run everything through. So I'm not going to make you watch me do this whole thing, but I'm going to go all the way around, end it on this side, and you see why we had to sew up this back seam first, right? Because I wanted to leave this open and I needed to fold that around. So I'm going to finish this off and I'll meet you back here for the next part. A little trick I wanted to show you, because you can end up with a lot of threads, you know, little ends. So I finished the casing all nicely stitched around, and I'm going to make I did a tack stitch, my quilter's knot, right? Hold that up, needle goes underneath, pull that, and there's another way to do this. I'll show it in another tutorial. Give that a little pull, and then instead of just trimming it here, you go in and go into the first layer, right? I'm not going through. I'm just kind of going in between in that casing. Come on up. And then you just trim. Oops. Oh, I didn't cut that. And then you just trim, and then you don't have that like hanging out. Now for the last part, and then these will be done. We just have to thread the casing. Let's not lose our needle. Put it in the pincushion. Is the legs. So I like to start right here in the center, right? The two seams coming down, and place a pin there. And then you just line them up. Like that. So what I'm going to actually do is, instead of going from like one end coming up and going back down, I'm going to start here, move down, start here, sew down, and turn them right sides out. And you've seen me stitch. It's just going to be a running stitch, and then I'll meet you back here and I'll show you how I thread the casing. Okay. And have fun, take your time, and just make sure when you're doing this that you line everything up, you know, carefully. Just take your time, and you'll see that everything fits. You know, you don't want to rush through, and when you're pinning, you know, have the back, you know, not have the two raw edges aligned. You want to make sure there's everything neat. All right, we're in the home stretch. So I sewed up the legs. All right, those are all done. And I am going to turn this right side out, and I'm going to thread the casing. And I'm using, I don't know what this stuff is, Anchor. It just says 100% cotton. Made in Chester, Connecticut, which is right next town from me. But it's vintage, like a lot of what I have. I would love to have a really thin, like tape, cotton tape, but I haven't been able to find something thin enough, so this will be fine. I could also use like silk ribbon, which I have. The 4mm silk ribbon would be fine. And again, you could just do the whole casing, leave a little opening at the bottom, you know, sew this up, leave an open at the bottom, and put a piece of elastic in, which I don't like. All right, I'm using a chenille needle. Where is my camera? That does not have a point. It's a dull one. And I've got some of that cotton yarn, cotton floss. And I'm just gonna go in, and I could use a bodkin. I have really narrow bodkins. I just don't have one right at hand. See, I'm just pushing that through. I'm gonna pop through the cotton there. Oh, pop through again. Okay. There it is. Oh dear. There we go. And you can like tie little knots at the end. I'm going to leave it really, really long. So there's the waist. Now let's move out a little bit. Okay. Don't mind my really ratty wool sweater, but I've been painting today. I'm always doing something. All right, so here is Meredith. And she's got on her, I'll put her horizontal, her little Halloween dress. I'm going to take off her hat. The pattern for the hat, the tutorial is over on my website, JayneStitches.com. To get the pattern for the doll, just go to my Etsy shop, Jayne Stitches. All right. Take those off. You can see here I was just like, when I was figuring out the pattern, I just kind of gathered it up and I didn't, you know, do anything with that back. All right. The moment of truth. Boy, does this bring back childhood memories, right? Dressing your dolls. All right, so there they go. And then you just have to find the waistband. With a string, tie it, tie a little bow, and they are perfect little pantalettes. And they're called pantalettes because they're not bloomers, which would have kind of come out and then been gathered at the bottom. And these are also long. So that is it. And let me see if I can fit her whole. How cute are those? Really sweet. The lace looks adorable. If you don't follow me on Instagram, make sure you do. I show you how I make this little embroidered lace detail, which is really fast and easy. And the dress pattern comes with the doll pattern. Let me get a little further out. I think that's as far as I can go. But there she is. How sweet is that? Here's her little hat. She's ready for Halloween with her new pantalettes. Any questions at all, please ask in the comments. Again, if you want the pattern, it's the end of October, as you could see with her little witch's hat. But this doll pattern is something I've been working on for many, many years, believe it or not. And I perfected it. I wanted a certain look to my cloth doll. And this is the time to start sewing them up as gifts for sure. This would be a wonderful, wonderful gift. You get the dress pattern with the doll and the little pantalettes, and the hat are over at JayneStitches.com, and those are free. So again, thank you so much for watching. Any questions, please ask. Happy Halloween, everyone.